Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari 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 Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Natira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Gaur Brahmanande. All grace to assembled devotees, all grace to assembled devotees, all grace to assembled devotees, all grace to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 9. The Lord incarnates as Mohini Murti. text number 27 and 28 today, because 27 doesn't have a purport. Pita praye mrite devair Bhagavan loka bhavanaha Pashyatam asurindranam Swam rupam jagrihe hari Pita praye mrite devair Bhagavan loka bhavanaha Pashyatam asurindranam Swam rupam jagrihe hari Pita praye mrite devair Bhagavan loka bhavanaha Pashyatam asurindranam Swam rupam jagrihe hari. Tamasindranam Pita praye amrite devar Bhagavan loka bhavanaha Pashyatam asurindranam Swam rupam jagrihe hari. Vaishnavis. Pita praye amrite devar Bhagavan loka bhavana Pashyatam asurindranam Swam rupam jagrihe hari. Pita praye mrite devar Bhagavan loka bhavana Pashyatam asurindranam Swam rupam jagrihe hari. Pita praye mrite devar Bhagavan loka bhavana Pashyatam asurindranam Swam rupam jagrihe hari. Word for word, please repeat after me. Pita praye. When almost finished being drunk, amrite, the nectar, devai, by the demigods, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Mohini Murti, Loka Bhavana, the maintainer and well-wisher of the three worlds, Pashyatam, in the presence of Asura Indranam, all the demons with their chiefs, Swam, own, Rupam, form, Jagrihe, manifested, Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the best friend and well-wisher of the three worlds. Thus, when the demigods had almost finished drinking the nectar, the Lord, in the presence of all the demons, disclosed his original form. Next verse, number 28. Evam surasura gana samadeshakala hetvav artha karma matayo pi phale vikalpaha tatramritam suragana phalam anjasapur yatpada pankaja raja shrayanana daityaha. Translation. The place, the time, the cause, the purpose, the activities, the place, the time, the cause, the purpose, the activity, and the ambition were all the same for both the demigods and the demons. But the demigods achieved one result and the demons another. Because the demigods are always under the shelter of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, they could very easily drink the nectar and get its result. The demons, however, not having sought shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, were unable to achieve the result they desired. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita 4.11, it is said, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Judge who rewards or punishes different persons according to their surrender unto His lotus feet. Therefore, it can actually be seen that although karmis and bhaktas may work in the same place, at the same time, with the same energy, and with the same ambition, they achieve different results. The karmis transmigrate through different bodies in the cycle of birth and death, sometimes going upward and sometimes downward, thus suffering the results of their actions in the karma chakra, the cycle of birth and death. The devotees, however, because of fully surrendering at the lotus feet of the Lord, are never baffled in their attempts. Although externally they work almost like karmis, the devotees go back home, back to Godhead, and achieve success in every effort. The demons or atheists have faith in their own endeavors, but although they work very hard day and night, they cannot get any more than their destiny. The devotees, however, can surpass the reactions of karma and achieve wonderful results even without effort. It is also said, Phalena parichiyate. One's success or defeat in any activity is understood by its result. There are many karmis in the dress of devotees, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can detect their purpose. The karmis want to use the property of the Lord for their selfish sense gratification, but a devotee endeavors to use the Lord's property for God's service. Therefore, a devotee is always distinct from the karmis, although the karmis may dress like devotees. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 3.9, Yagyarthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. One who works for Lord Vishnu is free from this material world, and after giving up his body, he goes back home, back to Godhead. A karmi, however, although externally working like a devotee, is entangled in his non-devotional activity, and thus he suffers the tribulations of material existence. Thus, from the results achieved by the karmis and devotees, one can understand the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who acts differently for the karmis and jnanis than for the devotees. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita therefore says, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakali Ashanta. The karmis who desire sense gratification, the jnanis who aspire for liberation or merging into the existence of the Supreme, and the yogis who seek material success in mystic power are all restless and ultimately they are baffled. But the devotee who does not expect any personal benefit and whose only ambition is to spread the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is blessed with the all-auspicious results of Bhakti Yoga without hard labor. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this verse profoundly highlights the difference between those who surrender unto Krishna and those who don't. Although they might be doing the same activity. We can see in this pastime, the demons and the demigods were churning the ocean, right? The Samudra Manthan pastime. So the demigods were thrown out from their positions by the demons, and they approached Lord Brahma for advice. And Lord Brahma said, let's go and see Lord Vishnu, Kshirodakshai Vishnu. And so they went there, made some prayers, the Lord came, and then he told them that they should churn the ocean. And they should make truce, they should make a peace treaty with the demons. So they reached out to Bali Maharaj, they came up with an agreement to churn the ocean so they can get the pot of nectar. And then, and the churning rod happened to be a very big mountain. Mandara mountain is huge. And the rope would be a snake, Vasuki. So the demons pulled the head of the snake, and the demigods were pulling the tail. And the Lord took the form of a tortoise so that the mountain can be held as a base, because earlier it sank in the ocean and the Lord had to retrieve it. So he became the base for the mountain, and then they were churning it. So many wonderful things came. The Uchayashrava, the horse, Aravata, the elephant, Surabhi, the cow came, right? So different demigods took these various articles. The Kaustubha gem also came. Lord Vishnu took that, put it on his chest. The goddess of fortune also came, and then she married Lord Vishnu. And in this way they were churning, so they were doing the same activity. They were doing it for the same result, with the same dedication, with the same ambition, with the same drive. But their results were very vastly different, because the demons didn't get the nectar. So then, finally, when the nectar, Dhanvantari, the partial incarnation of the Lord, he came with the pot of nectar, immediately the demons, they snatched it from his hands. And then there was a fight amongst themselves. So they were supposed to equally distribute it amongst themselves and the demigods. But being demons, they were very self-centered. And a big fight ensued. And they ran away, took the nectar from the demigods, ran away, and they were fighting amongst themselves. So the demigods were again morose. And they again took shelter of Lord Vishnu. So they approached the Lord and said, my dear Lord, this has happened. What do we do? And then the Lord appeared as Mohini Murti, the most beautiful woman in the entire creation. Even more beautiful, it is said, even more beautiful than the goddess of fortune, because Mohini Murti is non-different from Krishna, from the Lord. So Mohini Murti appeared, and both the demigods and the demons were stunned by her beauty. The beautiful features of Mohini Murti have been described earlier in this chapter. So they were stunned by the beautiful features, And they lost all their intelligence. The demons were especially totally swayed by her beauty. And they lost all reason and logic, so much so that they handed her the pot of nectar. She even told them, "How can you trust me? I'm just loosely roaming around here and there. I have no shelter. I'm just roaming around." And she compared herself to like a prostitute. She said, how can you trust me? But they said, no, we trust you. Somehow they had full confidence and faith in her, and they handed her over the pot of nectar. And she even told them that I might act in a just manner or unjust manner. They said, no problems, we trust you. And then she told them, okay, now everyone sit down. The demigods were seated in one place. So the demons and demigods were separated from each other. There was a bit of a distance. And she said, the demigods, they're restless, they're greedy, whatever. So I'll serve them first. And they said, no problems. And they did not protest. And then she served the demigods all the nectar. So all the demons except for Rahu, they fell for the trick. And even despite seeing that she had given everything, they did not protest because they didn't want to spoil their relationship with her. So they wanted a relationship with her, and they didn't want to spoil their chances. So they didn't protest. But Rahu, he saw through it. He wore the clothes of a demigod, and he sat on the other side. So he drank the nectar. Before the nectar went down his body, like the Surya and the sun and the moon, they detected that, and they made a commotion about it. So before the nectar went down his body, the Lord, with his Sudarshan Chakra, chopped off his head. But because he had drunk the nectar, and to prove the potency of the nectar, his head was alive. He was alive in his head, but his body had died. So it was a very wonderful scene that Rahu, the head is alive, the body is gone. So in this manner, they were cheated. So they were the demons and the demigods were doing the same activity. They were doing the exactly same activity, but the demigods had taken shelter of the Lord. That was the difference. So the difference was the demigods had taken shelter, or they had surrendered unto Krishna. And because they had surrendered unto Krishna, they were successful. So externally, as Prabhupada is saying, a devotee and a non-devotee could be doing exactly the same activity. So a devotee and non-devotee, they both are going to work, right? Wearing the same clothes, doing the same activity. So externally they look identical, but internally there is a big difference in their motivation. So the motivation of the devotee is to please the Lord, whereas the motivation of a non-devotee is to gratify their senses. So that is the difference between a devotee and non-devotee. A devotee goes to work, runs their family, ultimately to dedicate their life to pleasing Krishna. And then Krishna reciprocates, as Prabhupada says in the purport, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. So Krishna says, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. So we see that non-devotees, they're bound by their own karma, right? So all of us are bound by the ropes of karma. That's why we are sitting here. That's why we're in the material world, because we are we are chained by karma. Karma is like an invisible chain. And we are constantly accruing karma by our actions. So we're getting, there's a whole cycle of karma explained in the Nectar of Devotion, how impressions form, how there's a seed, it fructifies gradually, right? There's unmanifested reactions, there's a manifested reaction. So in this way, we are bound by karma. So for a non-devotee, any result they're getting is a result of the karma, no matter how hard they try. Irrespective of the effort they put in, they will get what is destined by the karma. So we have been in the material world since time immemorial. So Prabhupada says, been here since time immemorial. The Shastra says. So we've been here in so many life forms, but in the human form of life, we are acquiring karma. And we have a huge stockpile of karma. Like there's a stockpile of weapons, we have a huge stockpile of karma. And in this life, we are experiencing the results of our previous actions in previous lives, and even in this life, right? So we're getting a mixture of all of that. So no matter how much effort we put in, we will get what is destined. So for a non-devotee, they get what they're destined. But because we are under illusion. People are under illusion. So a non-devotee thinks whatever I'm doing, any success I'm having, is due to my own efforts. So, and Krishna talks about that in the Bhagavad Gita. In 3.9, he says, what's that verse? Yes, he says, Prakrite kriya manani gunai karmani sarvacha ahankar vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. So right, Krishna says in the Gita, the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself to be the doer. So in conditioned life, with material consciousness, a person thinks that whatever success they're having or whatever they're doing is by their own efforts, is by their own endeavor. They forget to realize that there is Rishikesh. They forget about Rishikesh. Rishikesh means the master of the senses. Because in material life, we are thinking we are the master of our senses, and whatever we are doing, whatever we are getting is the result of our actions, is our endeavor. Because I planned, I strategized, I took this step, I took that step, avoided this risk, did a whole risk mitigation exercise, then I acted in XYZ, and I've got XYZ result. And as one gets more successful, the more one gets bewildered. So the nature of life is, the more success, material success one gets, the more bewildered one gets. And the more they think I am the doer. But Krishna says in the 18th chapter that there are 5 causes of action. He says there's the body, then there's the performer, the karta, the soul, right? There's the senses. There's the endeavor. And then ultimately, there's me, the super soul. So there's 5 causes of action. And all we can do is desire. So a jiva can only desire, but then Krishna, according to a karma, he sanctions our desires. So for a non-devotee, whatever happiness and distress they get is a result of their own karma. They cannot get anything more than that, they won't get anything less than that. By their endeavors, they might get something a lot now, but if it's meant to be only so much wealth, it will go away. They might get it now, but then something will happen, someone will take it away. The government will take it away, or your relative might take it away. So there's something happens. It goes away. In the same way, even the distress is written for us. How much distress we're going to get, in what areas of life. It's all like there. So no matter how much hard we try to overcome that, we can't. Whether we do it individually or collectively as a society, we can't. So there's so many planning commissions going on, everything. But then, like for example, COVID came. Everything was thrown out of the window, and they had to, come up with another 5-year plan. So this is karma for us in the material world. And non-devotees are thinking they are the doers. But a devotee understands that they are not the doer, that Krishna is the doer. Sometimes we even see with devotees, if they get very successful, I've seen with some devotees, they become very successful and they're posting on social media about quotes like, you think like this, you get that, you get that. So in other words, they're saying we are the doer. You can also achieve this. I've achieved so much success. Yeah, maybe you can. But ultimately it depends on our karma. So for a devotee, Krishna uses the karma to purify them. So the karma also remains for a devotee. But that same karma is used to purify us. So the mindset of a devotee in terms of happiness and distress is when a devotee gets any distress, they think that this is only a token reaction I'm getting. I was meant to get much more, but I'm only getting this much. Maybe my leg was meant to be chopped off, I only got a scratch. So in this way, a devotee sees that Krishna is purifying them through their karma. And Krishna decides how much karma to give a devotee, because once a devotee has taken shelter of the Lord, they are under his jurisdiction. Then Krishna decides how to bring that devotee back to Godhead and what's the best way to bring him or her. And if a devotee gets a lot of success, they think, actually, this is not by my endeavor. This is, the Lord has given me so much facility, so I can use it in His service. And when we are acting with this mindset, then a devotee can achieve extraordinary things. So a devotee, as Prabhupada says in the purport, a devotee can achieve extraordinary things when they take shelter of the Lord, when they act for the Lord. We see this in the example of Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, he came to America on the instruction of his guru. So he had very strong faith in his spiritual master. And at the advanced age of 69, he boarded the Jaladuta and came with copies of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, not fully translated, first canto, some chapters. He came with that, but very strong faith. And then he did miracles. So there's Miracle on 2nd Avenue. There's that book. If you read it, you just read a miracle after a miracle. So Prabhupada worked with very unqualified people. So for example, there were so many hippies who came, and with them he started this movement. And then in 10 years he spread it all over the world. He empowered so many devotees like Shyam Sundar, Janaki, Mukunda. In 1968, Prabhus, they were sent to London to start a new branch there. So they were sent, they were very young, they're in their 20s, early 20s. Totally inexperienced in life. No money. So they had no money, no contacts in a foreign land. Got a visa but had no money to go there. So when they reached immigration, they just had enough money for one person. So one person got there, sent the money back. They used the same money to show it immigration, and like that they went there. So they had no resources, but they had strong faith in the instructions of the spiritual master. And thus they were empowered to do the impossible. So they went to London. In a very short amount of time, they started a center. They made contact with the Beatles. They befriended George Harrison. They published an album. It became a top-selling record in the world. And they got the Bhaktivedanta manner. So we can see how much they were empowered. And they did things that maybe in the karma was not even there, So they went above and beyond. They did things which were not possible. So there's that very nice verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatam aham vande paramananda madhavam. So mukham karoti vachalam. Mukham means a person who cannot speak. Mukham karoti vachalam. If one takes shelter of the Lord, even such a person can start speaking. The impossible can happen. Eloquently, fluently, thank you. Not only speak, but speak eloquently, fluently. You can see with so many devotees, no experience before in public speaking. But then they're speaking so nicely, and they can inspire so many people. Why? Because they've taken shelter of the Lord, and then they've been empowered to speak. Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim. So pangum means a person who can't walk. So such a person can cross mountains, like become a mountaineer. So we can see that is the potency. So in meaning that one can do great things in the movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, we do things which we might never be able to, which we can never do in the material world. Like I was hearing the scores of the Bhadra campaign. The Mahalakshmi Mataji, I think she did 209 Bhagavatam sets. This three-digit figure. It is extraordinary in a month. It's for someone doing that. So there is some Shakti there, right? There is empowerment. Ordinarily, a person cannot do this much. And even if karmis try to sell these books with the best sales techniques, they can't. You can come up with the best sales, create your pipelines, this, that. But spreading the Krishna consciousness movement requires empowerment. And when a devotee is empowered, the movement spreads. So that's how Prabhupada did the impossible, because he's a pure devotee, empowered by the Lord. And we even saw, the example like Janananda Prabhu, right? Janananda, right? So he started the Rath Yatra. Just an ordinary devotee driving a taxi. All the money he was making, he would give it to the temple. All his income would go towards the running of the temple and building the Rath cart. He was doing a simple job, but all the time he was engaged in service. He was so empowered, and he inspired so many other devotees by his humility. So these are some examples of devotees who have done extraordinary things, which ordinarily they could have never done. So a devotee takes shelter of the Lord. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajami aham. Right? So different people come to Krishna with different motivations. And Krishna satisfies them. So even in Vaishnavas, we can see there's different rasas, right? There's Shanta rasa, Dasya, Sakhya. So there's Vatsalya, Madhurya, right? There's different rasas. So according to one's desire, Krishna fulfills it. And Prabhupada said, there are some people who want to be impersonalists. They're not interested in serving the personhood of God. They just want to have a very they just want to merge in the light. So they want to be in the Brahma Jyoti. Then Krishna fulfills that. There's some who want to see the Paramatma, no active service, just see the Lord in the heart. Then Krishna fulfills that. The karmis, he fulfills their desires through their karma. So, but the main point is we need to, whatever our motivation is, we need to approach Krishna. As in the Bhagavatam it says, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So, whether one is akama, no desire, or sakama, one is full of desires. Akama sarva kamo va. One should approach Krishna and render devotion with full force. Tivrena means full force. Just like the sun, the Australian sun, it hits us with a lot of force. Even if there's cloud, because this ozone layer is a little bit lacking, it hits us with a lot of force and it burns us. You stand in the sun now summer is coming, around 11 a.m. you stand, you get burnt. So in the same way, what it means by full force is to perform bhakti without any motivation. So if we perform hearing and chanting sincerely, without any motivation, then we get purified. So the example of that is Dhruva Maharaj. So Dhruva Maharaj, he had so many desires because he was insulted by his stepmother. So he wanted to have a kingdom greater than his great-grandfather, who happened to be Lord Brahma. So he wanted the best of the best in the world. And he was advised by Narad Muni to go in the forest and chant the mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So he went there with sakama. He went there with a material motivation. But the good thing was, he had approached the Lord. He had approached a devotee of the Lord. And the devotee of the Lord told him to do hearing and chanting. So he was doing hearing and chanting. He was doing chanting the mantra. So Dhruva Maharaj, he chanted this mantra. And then the Lord appeared in front of him. And when he saw the Lord, he said, what I'm aspiring for is insignificant. It lost its value for him. So all the kingdom and all the trappings of the kingdom, all the perks which come with it, the glorification, all of that became insignificant for Dhruva Maharaj. It was like broken pieces of glass. So, like glass, if you're in a house, you have glass and your child breaks it. It has no value. You just clean it and throw it out. So in the same way, then all these desires for a big kingdom, for him it was like broken pieces of glass. It lost its appeal, which to a non-devotee has a lot of appeal. The power, the fame, the position, the money. So all those things, he lost its appeal. And then he got purified. So we can say, akama sarva kamava moksha kama udharadi. So by approaching Krishna, we become purified. So basically there is a contrast between the results that a non-devotee gets versus what a devotee gets. This is what we are hearing in this verse. So the demons, they did not get the nectar. But the demigods, they got the nectar. So the results were very vastly different. So externally, one is doing the same thing. Even the non-devotees might even look successful. So a devotee goes to work, they're struggling, a non-devotee is working. But sometimes it looks like they're more successful than devotees. They're making more money, they have a nicer house, they have good material arrangements, circumstances, good family, everything is there. They look very successful. But actually from the perspective of the Shastra, they are a failure. It's a big failure. Externally they look successful. There is prestige in society. They might even have a stable family situation. But if they're not a devotee, and if they're not approaching God, Krishna, and rendering seva, then ultimately it's a failure. Because they're still stuck in the cycle of birth and death. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, yagyathat karmano anyatra loko yam karma bandhana. So work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu is liberating. Any other work is binding in this world. So any activity you do is binding. So a non-devotee is not successful because they have to come back again in this world to experience material life again. Whereas a devotee, because they've taken shelter of Krishna and they're doing devotional service, they eventually they get liberated. And even in this lifetime they're peaceful. So the big difference between a non-devotee and a devotee is a devotee is peaceful, whereas a non-devotee is restless. Or even us as devotees, if we haven't taken enough shelter of the Lord, we also become restless sometimes. When we see others are doing so well, oh, look at this devotee, he has so much. I don't have. Or look at their job. Look at their business. So sometimes we also become restless when we haven't taken sufficient shelter of Krishna. But someone who has taken shelter of Krishna, though externally they don't have much, but they're peaceful. So, and as it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakali Ashanta. So it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19, that because a devotee of Lord Krishna is desireless, they are peaceful. So that is the secret of being peaceful. It is to become desireless. What does it mean to become desireless? Does it mean we stop desiring? Everyone go to the forest, become a sannyasi or a brahmachari with minimal desires. What does it mean to be desireless? It means to desire only for Krishna. That's what it means to become desireless. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suridam sarva bhutanam. What's the last line? Say that again. Gyatva shanti michyati. Yeah, so Bhoktaram yagya tapasam. So a devotee understands that Krishna is the bhokta or the beneficiary of all their sacrifices. Sacrifices mean all their endeavors or yagya. So all of us are doing a yagya, whether we realize it or not. Yagya doesn't mean just the yagya as we know, lighting a fire, offering oblations. That is yagya, yes. But yagya also means any activity you're doing, right? So, yes. And then the results of all our activities should be dedicated to Krishna. Krishna is the enjoyer. And what is the main activity in this day and age, as Mahatma Prabhu just said? Sankirtan Yagya. So the Yagya of this day and age is Yagya Sankirtana Prayar, is to chant the holy names of the Lord. So in all our activities, whether we are working or in the temple doing deity worship, there should be chanting. It should be accompanied by chanting. So even in deity worship, there is chanting of various mantras. And when yagya is going on, like there was an initiation yagya last weekend, there was kirtan going on in the background. So we can see there's chanting. At work also we can chant. Can play some kirtan where possible. We start our day with japa, or maybe we end our day with japa. So, but we are doing chanting. So, Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam, the beneficiary of all our activities is the Supreme Lord. Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. And that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. So all our property, our investments, on the title it might be us, but actually the real proprietor is Krishna. Unstated, but is there. On paper it looks like us, the director of a corporation, of an entity, but actually the supreme director is the Lord. And we are simply caretakers of Krishna's property, meant to be used in Krishna's service. And that is the difference between a devotee and a karmi. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, there are many karmis in the dress of devotees, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can detect their purpose. The karmis want to use the property of the Lord for their selfish sense gratification, but a devotee endeavors to use the Lord's property for God's service. So just because someone is dressed like a devotee, wears a sari, dhoti, kurta, tilak, that doesn't necessarily make them a devotee, though externally they might look like one. So that's like a sahajya, prakrita bhakta, right? So like we can see, unfortunately, even in places like the Dham, it's become too money-minded. Some devotees are too just thinking about money in the Dham also. Buying land, selling it, making a big profit out of it. So these are very material activities, and especially in a holy place like that. So one can wear the dress of a devotee, but ultimately it is one's actions that Krishna sees. And Krishna can see through our facade we are putting up. Because we might put up a facade, like a house has a facade, right? Every house, or most houses will have a facade, but behind that is the actual house. It looks a certain way. So in the same way, we might come across as something, but we are not that. So we might put up a facade, but Krishna, being seated in the heart of everyone as a super soul, matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. So Krishna is seated in the hearts of all living entities. He can read all our desires. He can see our true motives, our actions. And so we cannot fool Krishna, as Prabhupada is saying here. So the demons were trying to fool Krishna, but they were unsuccessful. And in fact, Mohini Murti, she fooled them. They were trying to trick Krishna, and like Hiranyakashipu thought, I will try to trick God. I will become immortal in another way. I asked Lord Brahma for the boon. He couldn't give it to me. I'll twist it and I'll take the back road. So he came up with this whole material logic, and he came up with various conditions, various rules like this. But then the Lord maintained his devotee's promise, but at the same time, he killed Hiranyakashipu. So in the same way, we might put up a facade, But Krishna can see through that, as Prabhupada is saying. So it's quite interesting. Prabhupada mentions in the purport that a devotee might be dressed up like a karmi, like most devotees going to work, dressed up like a karmi, but they're not. Their intention, their motivation is completely different. But sometimes a karmi can be dressed up like a devotee. So there's a karmi is dressed up like a devotee. But then Krishna can see through that. That is also not the same. So ultimately it is our actions that dictate who we are. Right? So what we do and what we say, sometimes there can be a big difference, big gap between what we are doing and what we are saying. And we just need to try to close that gap so we can please the Lord. And another point Prabhupada makes in the purport is that devotees don't have to endeavor much, whereas non-devotees have to endeavor a lot. So we can see with non-devotees, they're bound up by the karma. So someone who's not a devotee, they're bound by the karma, and they have to strive to get whatever results they want. But for a devotee, sometimes things just come to them naturally without endeavoring. So if we take shelter of Krishna, actually we don't need to worry about our maintenance so much. What's that verse? There's Chaitanas Chaitnanam. What's that verse? I just forgot. Chaitanas Chaitnanam. Nitya Nityanam. Chaitanas Chaitnanam. Then third one is... But the point being that devotees, Krishna is the maintainer of his devotees. They don't have to strive. So if we become a devotee, then all facility naturally comes to us. I'm not sure if you have experienced it, but I certainly have. I can see that when we practice bhakti, like when I used to be in the temple here, so when I left the temple, I had no qualification, was out of touch with the industry, but somehow Krishna provided work with hardly any effort, with the help of devotees, obviously, with the blessings of the Vaishnavas. The Lord facilitated the maintenance. So if we are taking shelter of Krishna, then our maintenance is taken care of, because Krishna is looking after the maintenance of all living entities. Prabhupada gives the example of Krishna is looking after the elephant. Right? Elephant is eating tons of food. It needs a lot of food. You look at a lion, they eat so many kilos of meat every day. So they are being looked after by nature's arrangement. So if we take shelter of Krishna, we will also be looked after. But it is a matter of faith. So if the faith is there, then we will be peaceful and we won't be so restless. Whereas a non-devotee, the faith is lacking, they will become restless. And then they think they need to do it by their own endeavor, the point which I spoke about earlier. So I think I've covered all points here. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask or make. Mahatma Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mandir.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank
Nice
you
to
very
have you
much
here.
For wonderful class. You gave how Prabhupada took so much trouble. He had only 40 rupees and he had to take the boat to reach there. So it's so important that if we serve Krishna with heart, then we can get anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Very meaningful presentation. The churning of milk ocean and then getting the nectar. So through the process, as Prabhupada has purport that only the devotees get the benefit, not the karmis, as you mentioned. So to become devotee is not very easy, isn't it? It's very difficult. Can you highlight on this?
Okay, to become a devotee is not... Yeah, so yes and no. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made... Yes, you're right, to become a devotee is not easy. So if we read the Bhagavad Gita, one has to go through the entire process, right? So you normally go through karma kanda, then you do karma yoga, jnana yoga, then you get into Ashtanga yoga, then eventually you come to bhakti yoga. So it is a very gradual process. That's why it's called the yoga ladder. So that's the normal process. Even to perform bhakti, you need to be purified. You need to be on the Brahman platform, right? So that's the platform from where bhakti starts. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made it very accessible. So yes, it is very difficult. It is not very easily accessible. 5,000 years ago, things were much more conducive. And in Kali Yuga, because we are living in the iron age of quarrel, so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, out of his compassion, he has made it extremely accessible. So he's basically said, you don't need to follow all that process, all those rules. I'll give you bhakti straight away. So Mahaprabhu has made it accessible through his name. So he has descended in the form of his holy name in this dark day and age, and he has made it very accessible to us. So anyone can practice it. So in that sense, it is very easy. But yes, of course, even after becoming a devotee, to go the distance is not easy with the same spirit. So the initial enthusiasm we get when we become a devotee, and initially we perform bhakti with great vigor, maybe with a lot of purity also, with a lot of sincerity. But to maintain that level of sincerity and purity throughout your whole career as a devotee in this lifetime is certainly not easy. Because, and the reason it becomes difficult is because we are performing offenses against the chanting of the holy name. So, though bhakti is very accessible in the form of the holy name, we can see Ajamil, he was the Brahman, he fell down due to bad habits. He saw a prostitute, got attracted, left his relationship with his wife, essentially took divorce, and then with another woman living, had kids, and then when he's dying, he called out the name of Lord Narayan. But because he had chanted that name offensively, the Vishnu Dutas, they appeared. So the problem is, it becomes challenging because we are performing offenses against the holy name. And we recite the 10 offenses, and the main offense is to be inattentive while chanting. And that is the root cause of all the other offenses. So to remain a devotee our whole life is not easy, but definitely it can be done in good association. So that's why the temple is there, the Sangha of the Vaishnavas is there, the Shastra is there where we can try to be a devotee. So yeah, it's difficult, made accessible, but then again also it takes a lot of sincere effort to stick to the path. Hare Krishna. Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll end here. Thank you for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granth Raj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai.